Every morning at 8:15, Mason Holt stopped on Main Street, looked at the same silver sports car, and wrote the same parking ticket. It was always parked under the no parking sign, like a silent challenge to his authority. Locals laughed, saying he was wasting ink, but Mason believed rules only mattered if someone enforced them. One cold morning, his scanner showed the name registered to the car, Mayor Franklin Rowe. Mason froze. The car he'd been ticketing wasn't just mocking him, it was part of something far bigger, and he had just stepped into its shadow. Mason's life was built around small routines: coffee at Ellie's Diner, patrol along Main, and neatly filed tickets by noon. He wasn't rich or important, but he was proud of being fair. In Brookhaven, fairness was rare. Still, one car kept pushing him. That silver coupe looked too clean for cracked roads and too confident to care about laws. Every time he saw it, it reminded him how power got away with everything. He didn't know yet that this stubborn habit, writing one more ticket, was about to unravel the whole town. People around town called Mason Meterman. They'd chuckle when they saw him writing tickets in freezing weather. His boss, Ron, often told him to let small stuff go. But to Mason, there was no small stuff. The moment you ignored one rule, everything started to rot. That silver car was proof. Every morning it parked wrong, as if the driver wanted to test him, and Mason, stubborn as ever, kept testing back, one slip of paper at a time, not realizing he was poking at something dangerous. When Mason entered the station that Friday, Ron leaned over his desk and said quietly, "Stop writing tickets for that car." The warning wasn't a suggestion. Ron's tone carried fear. Mason frowned but said nothing. Later, outside, he stared at the car again. The tinted windows reflected his own confused face. The engine was off, yet the trunk felt warm, like it had been running. Mason wrote another ticket anyway. As the printer beeped, a thought crossed his mind. Maybe this wasn't about parking anymore. Maybe someone didn't want that car noticed. That afternoon, while Mason grabbed lunch at the diner, he overheard two city workers whispering about late-night deliveries by the old mills. One mentioned a gray car with special clearance. Mason's ears perked up. He finished his sandwich, went outside, and saw the same silver coupe parked across the street. The license plate shimmered in the sunlight, mocking him. He realized the car wasn't just showing up by chance. It was moving on a pattern. It was always there before shipments or city repairs. Something wasn't adding up. Mason began logging every sighting, times, locations, even fuel smells. Each note told a story that didn't fit the mayor's official schedule. The car parked for hours in odd places, near warehouses, shipping docks, even the empty school gym. He'd walk by casually, pretending not to care, but his instincts screamed otherwise. One night, he caught a faint chemical smell near the trunk, sharp and unnatural. It wasn't gas or oil. Whatever this car carried, it wasn't groceries. Mason's curiosity became obsession, and he didn't realize he was being watched too. That night, Mason parked his old sedan across from the car's usual spot and waited. Hours passed. Streetlights buzzed, insects swarmed, and the town fell silent. Just when he thought it was another dead night, a man in a black coat appeared, carrying a briefcase. The man opened the trunk, slid the case inside, and drove off fast. Mason's pulse spiked. He started his car, followed quietly, headlights off. The silver car disappeared behind the old grain warehouse, and Mason knew he'd seen something he shouldn't have. The next morning, Mason barely slept. He ran the license plate again through his city app, expecting some fake company name. Instead, the owner's info loaded instantly. Mayor Franklin Rowe. His stomach dropped. The man who preached law and order at every town meeting was tied to that car. Mason stared at the screen for a long time, then locked his phone. For the first time, he didn't write a ticket. He just watched, wondering how deep this went and if anyone else already knew. Mason brought it up quietly with his boss again. "That car belongs to Rowe," he said. Ron didn't deny it. He just looked pale and muttered, "Drop it, Mason. Forget what you saw." That was all Mason needed to know. The silence around this car wasn't fear of paperwork. It was fear of power. That night he started digging. Old news archives, city budgets, missing shipments from Rose charity drives, all connected by small, strange dates that matched the car's movements. The pattern was undeniable. Mason stayed up late, going through public records. He saw repeated purchases made under community improvement funds, but no visible projects. His mind raced. He thought of the briefcase, the smell, the secrecy. If Rowe was involved in something criminal, that car was his delivery system. Mason began to take pictures quietly on his patrol. He had no plan yet, just proof. Little fragments of truth that scared him more each day. One morning, Mason found an envelope taped to his windshield. Inside was a printed message. "Stop writing tickets or you'll regret it." No signature. No threats needed. The message was clear. He looked around but saw no one. The town suddenly felt smaller, like every window watched him. Mason tucked the note in his pocket and decided not to tell anyone. Fear was creeping in, but so was anger. If they wanted him quiet, he must have been getting close. That same afternoon, a city clerk named Lila stopped Mason by the records room. She whispered that she'd seen him checking into shipment files and said softly, "You're not wrong. Be careful." Mason frowned but didn't press. Later, she slipped a plain folder into his glove box. Inside were photos of the same car outside the mayor's office at midnight and invoices from a supposed food relief program that never existed. The signatures were Rowe's. Mason realized this wasn't petty corruption. It was theft, disguised as charity. Days passed, and Mason felt the tension everywhere. His neighbors avoided eye contact. His boss grew distant. The mayor's smile on local billboards now looked menacing. He wanted to tell someone, but trust felt dangerous. Then one night, his tires were slashed outside his apartment. On his windshield, another note, "Last warning." Mason didn't sleep that night. He made multiple copies of the evidence and hid them in different places. He was in deeper than ever. But backing down wasn't an option. Lila met Mason again in secret and confessed her brother once drove the mayor's cars before vanishing. She believed he found something he shouldn't have. Her voice shook as she said it. Mason promised her they'd uncover the truth together. That promise would cost him everything. But it also gave him a reason to keep going. He wasn't just fighting a corrupt mayor anymore. He was fighting for people like Lila who had been silenced. They began tailing the silver car together. Lila tracked its movements using street cameras. Mason followed physically, blending into traffic. Late one night, they watched it park near an abandoned storage yard. Two men unloaded crates into a truck marked with fake city seals. Mason recorded every second with his body cam. When one of the men's faces turned toward the light, it was Rowe's own driver. They were smuggling stolen goods under charity labels, and the mayor's car was right in the middle. They turned their footage over to a state investigator. Mason trusted. But within 24 hours, the evidence disappeared. The investigator claimed the files never arrived. Mason's email logs said otherwise. Hours later, he received a suspension notice for unprofessional conduct. Everything was falling apart. He sat in his car, staring at the silver coupe parked across from his building again, perfectly clean as always. That's when he understood. The mayor's reach went higher than he thought. Mason spent 2 days in silence, doubting himself. Maybe he pushed too far. Maybe no one cared. But on the third day, his ticket alert pinged, the same silver car, same spot, almost like a taunt. He went there, wearing his uniform even though he was suspended, and saw the trunk slightly open. Inside, stacks of bundled cash. Mason's heart pounded. He took photos fast, uploaded them to a cloud drive, and locked his phone. This time, he wouldn't hand the evidence quietly. Mason called a reporter from the local news using a blocked number. He sent her the footage and the receipts anonymously. "Just look at the license plate," he wrote. Within hours, everything started moving. The next morning, headlines flooded every screen. Mayor's charity under investigation. Cameras surrounded City Hall. Mason stayed quiet at home, watching from his window as panic spread across Brookhaven's government offices. For once, the mayor looked nervous. At a public press conference, Mayor Rowe denied everything, calling it a smear campaign. He smiled confidently, surrounded by loyal staff. But behind that smile, Mason could see the cracks forming. People were whispering, old allies keeping their distance. Still, no one had full proof, until Mason decided to give them the one thing they couldn't ignore. That night, Mason walked into the community hall where the mayor was hosting a fundraiser. The room was full of cameras. He didn't say a word. He just connected his body cam to the projector and pressed play. The footage rolled. Rowe at the storage yard, his car packed with crates, money changing hands. The crowd gasped. Rowe's face drained of color as journalists rushed forward. The truth was no longer hidden behind tinted glass. The police arrived minutes later. Mason stood quietly as officers led Rowe away in handcuffs. Reporters surrounded him, asking questions, but he said nothing. He wasn't after fame, he just wanted the truth out. Leela stood beside him, tears in her eyes. For the first time, Brookhaven saw how one stubborn parking warden brought down the man who ran the town. Weeks later, investigations revealed how Rowe used his charity foundation to move stolen funds through shipments that never reached their destinations. The silver car was registered under a shell company tied to offshore accounts. Mason's persistence had exposed years of hidden corruption. His suspension was reversed, and his department quietly apologized. But Mason didn't feel like celebrating. He felt tired and vindicated. On his first day back, Mason walked down Main Street again. The sun was brighter, but the town still looked the same. Cracked sidewalks, faded signs, the same breeze off the hills. Yet something small had changed. People nodded respectfully when he passed. They no longer saw a meter man, they saw the man who refused to be scared. He reached the old parking spot. For the first time in months, it was empty. No silver car, no challenge waiting for him. Mason took out his ticket pad anyway, smiled faintly, and wrote "Case closed" on a blank slip. He tucked it under the sign, like leaving a message for whoever came next. Some battles, he realized, are won by just refusing to look away. Later that day, Lila met Mason for coffee. She thanked him quietly for keeping his promise. Her brother's name had been cleared in the investigation. The missing driver found in another state under witness protection. For Mason, that was enough closure. He didn't need awards or attention. He'd done what was right, even when it cost him. That evening, Mason sat on his apartment balcony, watching traffic flow below. Cars came and went, obeying the signs he once enforced so strictly. He smiled, realizing the world didn't need perfect order, just honest people willing to stand up when it mattered. His ticket pad lay beside him, worn, bent, and worth more than any medal. The next morning, Mason returned to duty like nothing happened. He walked his beat, waved at familiar faces, and felt a quiet peace in the routine again. The law wasn't just words on paper anymore. It was something he had proven could still protect people if someone cared enough to enforce it. When new officers asked about the mayor's story, Mason only said, "I was just doing my job." But deep down, he knew it wasn't about tickets or cars. It was about courage. About one person not giving up, even when the system said to stop. And that truth mattered more than any position or title. Months later, Brookhaven elected a new mayor who promised transparency. Mason never met him. He didn't need to. He saw the same silver car, now impounded behind the police fence, and nodded. Justice had parked where arrogance once stood. Mason walked away with a faint smile, knowing sometimes the smallest acts, like a simple parking ticket, can uncover the biggest lies. If this story of courage and persistence inspired you, consider subscribing for more stories like this one.